you think? Not bad. I know. It just got made for me, and I'm just quite loving it. Anyway, welcome to Beyond the Outer Realm, the sister show of the Outer Realm, which is on Wednesday and Thursday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. And of course, today, yes, my dear friend and our fan favorite Mark Olly returns, and we're going to be discussing, probably uncensored anyway, we're going to be discussing Sign of the Times. So on this day, January 13th, and by the way, episode 666, just leaving that there. And of course, Mark having said, yeah, I've got 13 in my address. Wonderful. It's just all meant to be the way things all fall into place. But we thought we would take a bit of a deep dive into, again, Sign of the Times, biblical apocalypse, AI, Mark of the Beast, UFOs, Cataclysm, spiritual warfare. Yeah, we're just going to rain on everybody's parade today, I think. But I think we'll have a lot of fun in the process. So thank you all for tuning in and joining us. Without further ado, Mark Olly, hello.
Hello. Hello.
How are you?
It's great to be back on this apocalyptic, beastly episode. It's lovely to be here, if that's the right use of terms.
I love it, though. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
It's so funny because when I realized that today was episode 666, I'm like, see, we got to change this up a bit because...
There you go. You see all these roads, numerology and all the rest of it, which of course is a, great thing in prophecy and what have you. Well, all roads lead to this. So, hey, it's what the universe wants us to do. We'll do it.
And here we are.
And here we are.
So, as if things weren't bad enough. We come in like yesterday and the whole soundboard's been wiped out. I guess the platform did an update, and I've had hosts just going boop boop boop, where's all our stuff? I'm like, what do you mean? I get on the board, I'm like, it's all gone.
Well, I'm new headphones, new laptop, the lighting's all different, everything's changed,
I know, I love your halo look.
Well, there you go. You see, radiant, I'm radiating halo.
You are. You're just emitting your light.
What I was actually going to say is anything could go wrong, at any moment.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
I'm not a great lover of super technology. This is the old singing, old dancing computer. This thing will do absolutely everything. And the other one was a really old Windows 10 machine, but I'm missing it already.
Yeah. It's like, what's going on?
Some advances are not advances really, but they are. That's perhaps in keeping with the subject of this evening.
Yeah, right. The signs of the time. I mean, where do we start with this? Do we start going back in time, or do we kind of get into the present a little bit and sort of meld them together? Because there's just a lot of talk. Like, people are just like, oh my God, no. The real people of faith are like, oh, here we go. Put your seatbelts on. It's like, what? Like, all right.
You've got to remember, though, that those folks have been like, on your marks, get set, go. They've been like that for about 2,000 years. Most people thought Jesus was coming back, within their lifetime, which was the first century.
Right.
And we're kind of still waiting. And again, most people think that word apocalypse means that's it, finito, end of everything. And it doesn't, because in Greek, it just means a reset. It means, things are going to change. That's what an apocalypse is.
So let's start there. Let's go into the biblical apocalypse, and let's just see how it all pertains to today. And if we're in the middle of spiritual warfare, like, let's throw it all in the pot and see where it goes, Mark. Let's just start off with biblical apocalypse.
Well, let me say right away, I mean, biblical is just one of many. I mean, we've had so many different religions over, let's go for it. So many religions over 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 years. And there are so many, people that have written and said and done and shown the way forward. Yes. I'm going to put it out there right at the very beginning. I know it's a bit radical to say this, but there are definitely human beings that have been able to see the future. I don't have any problem with that at all. How that functions, how they manage to see that, how time folds in on itself so that they can be there but somewhere else at the same time. I don't know. I don't have an easy answer for that. But having said then that I believe that people can see the future, I think, you've got Ezekiel, you've got Daniel, you've got John on Patmos, with his revelation.
Yeah.
You've got all these people over thousands of years that have written down what they think to be the future. When I was at Bible college, I said, well, Ezekiel and his whirling wheels, what happens if they're helicopters? And the four faces of the beasts that he sees, the man, the bear, the eagle, and the lion, what happens if they're badges on the sides of helicopters? And everyone was like, no, can't be that, can't be that. And then somebody actually came out and said, well, actually, you just described what we saw in Vietnam. We saw these things flying across the desert, firing and explosions and bangs and flashes, and operated as if they were alive, and with these different faces on them, and this, that, and the other. So clearly Ezekiel was seeing something,
Yes.
Hi, by the way, if anybody's like,
Yes. Mark and Heidi are both here. They're both our champions. Mark is out your neck of the woods, by the way. So,
So, and again, bringing what I've just said up to date, I mean, who would have thought that there were those hieroglyphs, in a temple in Egypt that seemed to show a tank, a helicopter, an armored car, an airship and an aeroplane, and that's just bonkers. I know people have said it's two different pharaohs' names superimposed, but to get like 5 modern vehicles, in one cluster, is it pareidolia or is it intentional?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. I think we're dealing with people's views of what's coming. Daniel was a great one. I think there's a passage in Daniel that actually quite accurately described what was happening in the Gulf War, to the point where we actually had people sat in churches going down line by line going, well, that's happened, oh look, that's happened, oh look what's coming next. Everyone was like, oh, here it comes, this is the end, and then there's actually a gap in the text. It's quite funny actually, and it stopped where the gap is in the text. So the next bit of the end of the world didn't happen, not at that particular point in time anyway. So there's things like that where you think, okay, well, we don't understand necessarily all of what we're reading, and it's a bit mixed up, but there's enough there to say, somebody somewhere knew something about what was going on, in the future. Which is where we are now, of course. There's loads of people out there of certain age that will remember that, back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the year 2026 is science fiction. Nobody back then would have, 2000 was just out of the question. When, next millennium, oh, that's, flipping Metropolis material, it's sci-fi.
Yeah.
But here we are. And
go ahead.
It has kind of gone that way. There's a lot of sci-fi now coming true.
Well, I mean, there's people out there who, again, just trying to sort out what we're going through right now. And I think you have to look back and think as well to going back, biblically speaking. I mean, Jesus Christ made his own predictions.
Oh, yes,
about things like that, like about some of them were about end days. He predicted the Temple of Jerusalem would fall, and it did. He predicted, but back then that was there, that was pretty dire, and I think we have to think back to the time periods. But he predicted that he would die, rise again, become the savior. Harvest is the end of the age. The reapers are the angels. The sons of man shall send forth his angels and gather his kingdom. And I mean, there was some pretty dire stuff coming from the Almighty, let me tell you.
Yep.
Right. And I think we do tend to lose sight of some of that. Like it's all been written for real.
Oh yeah. I mean, you mentioned the temple. I mean, that's just to the entire Old Testament, because it was the Old Testament race of Judaica. That was their twin towers. It was like bang, it was gone. It disappeared in one single conflagration in a day. And by the time the Romans had finished with it, there wasn't one stone on top of another on top of the Temple Mount. And part of the forecast for the future is that that's going to get rebuilt somehow. I don't think it's going to be rebuilt by human hands. I think John saw it descending from heaven. in a complete form, and also you've got return of the Ark of the Covenant. You've got, like, say, Jesus and the angels coming back, all this sort of thing happening, which actually plays into that word apocalypse, because again, it's not a complete finito. There's a lot of things going wrong. There's people dying, there's wars, plagues, natural disasters. You've got all the usual, it's always wheeled out in every prophecy. I think in every race that you can imagine, every path, every religion always reels out that same, volcanoes going off, things flying around in the sky. You've got the same set of signs. So the question really is, it's like, that's non-specific. It's like, how bad does that have to get before you know that you're about to cross the finishing line? But yeah, Jerusalem's a key player. Things are really hotting up in the Middle East at the moment. Not exactly the way we would have predicted it would have gone, I don't think. But
reminds me, do you think that anybody could take a book? I mean, the Bible's a big one, because people of faith, this is the book. Or the Quran, or whatever faith you follow has the set of rules, has the stories, has everything that leads them or guides them. Do you think that maybe there are powers that be, that look into these books or these scriptures and go, okay, this is how this is going to happen, this is how this is going to happen, and this is going to happen like this, and we're going to do it like then and then and then? Or do you think it's actually going somewhat the timeline that it was meant to?
Well, that's I suppose that's the greatest conspiracy theory of all time, isn't it? I mean, this is the
yes.
Come on, it's the Vatican Library, isn't it? It's that's where we're at now. We're at how much of that past knowledge is known, and who knows it? Where is it? I think it's a mixture of the two. I mean, somebody said many years ago, I think it was in the 1970s or the 1980s, over in the States there, the current administration that were there at the time were struggling to try and find out how to make barcodes on food work. So somebody in the administration went, wouldn't it be funny if the only number you couldn't forge was 3 6s? So somebody said, yeah, we'll give that a try. So they put 3 6s in the barcodes. And all of a sudden, that prophecy, nobody can buy or sell without, the 3 6s, the mark of the beast. Every single barcode ever has got a big line at the beginning, well, big double line at the beginning, big double line in the middle, and a big double line at the end. That's your 3 6s. Now, that didn't happen necessarily because it came from a mysterious prophecy. It happened because somebody had already read the Bible and that idea had already been mooted. So in a sense, that's bringing it into being. So that's a good example of how it happens the wrong way around, I suppose, but then it could be happening that way all the time. It could be happening that way where people have got access to material and to people who have that foreknowledge, have that foresight, and they're making use of that material to decide where we're going to go, which does make me wonder, though, because pretty much all the prophecies seem to indicate that the bad guys lose and the good guys win. So why would you intentionally go out of your way to be a bad guy?
Oh, no.
Part of that conspiracy, that's the ball that's gathered the moss that is that problem. I don't think some of the people think that they're bad. There's a lot of people out there, without dropping names, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of stuff that is biblical. And I don't necessarily think they realize that that's what they're doing.
Right.
Well, then again, you see the mark of the beast,
I know there are, and the mark, I mean, there is a lot with 666 for sure. There's things are not always as they seem either. Hello, Elsa. Hello.
Some people have said we've got the numbers wrong, by the way, because it's something like 6 and 3 score and 6 or something, and it depends how you translate the Hebrew. And I think somebody said it ends up coming out of something like 639 or something. It's not as straightforward as you think,
Right. Exactly. Well, all the world's a stage, right? So everything is not as it seems. So it makes you think, are we actually in a matrix or a simulation?
And if so, occasionally do we get a blip and it doesn't quite go where you think it's going to go,
The blip is kind of like, what happened there? Just, So with that being said, okay, a lot of people think that we are in spiritual warfare right now, and we are heading down that road. And you look at that as just with everything going on, like everything that is currently going on is leading obviously to something much bigger. Obviously, a reset, as you say, apocalyptic times, which are supposed to prepare you for Armageddon, the battle. That's what the book of
Yeah.
Revelations will tell you. So, what are your thoughts based on what's going on there? Don't hold back, go crazy.
All right. Well, there's a kind of a double thing there. The most
Yeah.
obvious thing is Armageddon, Megiddo, which is this valley outside
Yes.
Jerusalem. And the
Yes.
prophecy says that will be filled with blood to the height of a horse's bridle. So that's like 2 meters of absolute carnage, which would have happened in the past. If you had, a couple of armies, primitive armies going at it with swords and what have you, it would look like a butcher's shop. And that's what it's describing. On the other hand, the frightening bit is we can do that now in a split second with aerial burst weapons. If there was enough foot soldiers marching up a valley like that, we could just go and the whole lot of them's gone. You know what I mean? We just liquidize an army in seconds. So it's not quite as far-fetched as even in the past as it would have been, so it's worth bearing in mind compared to what we can do now technologically. A lot of the stuff that's in the Bible, there's a couple of prophets come back before the end times and they prophesy in Jerusalem. And of course, the Jerusalem authorities don't like that. So I think they either shoot them or kill them or do something and just leave the bodies in the street as an example. But they only last 3 days and they rise up. They come back to life and go up to heaven. Now it says, and all the world will see them. Now, that wasn't possible till the advent of satellites and television. It wasn't even physically possible for that to happen. So you're looking at some of these prophecies, they're clearly miles ahead of the time, miles ahead. How close are we getting? Are we marching towards that? Well, as an observer, because I'm quite a keen observer, anyone that's on my Facebook knows that I'm one of these crazy, conspiracy theory.
I watch.
Yeah.
Does it make me a bit of an accomplice?
But I suppose so. And people send me stuff as well. Loads of people do. And I do my research. And I can confidently say that since we've come into the 2020s, so since, we came out of lockdown and everything that was happening back then, which is a subject all of its own, as we've come out of that, there does seem to be an increase in what in the old days would have been defined as evil, and there seems to be an increase, as you say, all the world's a stage, in nutcases, who are getting far more airplay than they ever would have done at perhaps any other point in modern history. Some of them actually, I think, have probably, dare I say it, gone further than people like Hitler and Mussolini, and they've just gone much further than that, because by definition, what they've set out to do has caused more devastation and more destruction on a global scale. And people are capable of doing that now. You can have one guy affecting the entire planet, which is a strange piece of history to be in, Well, and I know what's happening now. I can see it written on your face. You're going, which guy? Which one? Who is it?
We all have our ideas,
We do. Now, I don't know how far we can go, but that's something that the prophets always seem to say. They say that we've got this Antichrist who is, to all intents and purposes, the savior, but actually isn't. And then there's another guy who's like his sidekick, and he's referred to as the false prophet, who brings in prophecies of things to come that actually at the end turn out not to be. There's quite a few candidates that could slot into those roles.
Well, it gets scary because when you think about it, if you look at, let's say, if you go down the checklist where it says he's supposed to be an intellectual, he's a genius and everything, right?
Oh yeah,
He's a good orator. He's very intellectual. He's a political genius. He's a commercial genius. He's a military genius, religious genius, and controls a Western power block. Right, and will make a 7-year covenant with Israel, of course, but he'll break it after 3 or so. He will attempt to destroy all of Israel. Like it gets all down that line. I mean, there's a whole list of things. I was reading them, kind of going. My mind's going, this person, this person, this person, this person. So who's a bit of that whole mix? It's or is it like Phil says, bloodlines?
Well, this is where it gets interesting, because if you do the checklist, and if you do decide to say, and I'm not saying this either way, but if you decide to say, I'm going to stick with the Bible, right? So if you do that checklist, then by definition, at the moment, those two individuals are not there. We're not seeing them. Okay. The potential for them to become that is definitely there, but I don't see one person yet that ticks every single box. And again, the thing, it's the capacity. Okay. It's the capacity question. Like we have a prime minister over here who, couldn't start a pee up in a brewery. He hasn't got the capacity or the authority or the respect to become one of those characters. But then that same thing swings across the Atlantic as well, because of course out there you've got a president who ticks some of the boxes but clearly doesn't tick all of them. That's difficult. I mean, I honestly thought, and I'm going to come out there, I honestly thought Elon Musk was going to be it. I thought,
really? Yeah.
He's got to be something. He's got to be part of this. You know what I mean? He's got to be it.
Yeah.
Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Where's he going with this? And all
Keeps you guessing. Keeps you guessing.
Well, what's happened over time is I've kind of gone down. It's diluted because he's now turning into the new NASA. That's what he's becoming. And there are so many things wrong in that sphere that I'm not really sure that he's as reliable as I first thought he was, So when you start looking at that, and you look at Bill Gates, you look at, all the other people that run Microsoft and the computing world and so on. I mean, there's a huge cascade of names and I could sit here all night quoting them. But when you start looking at them, none of them really tick all the boxes. So the question there would be, is it, as some people have said, is it the quote spirit of Antichrist? Is it something that's distributed right across the globe, which then takes on to that question that just flicked up about bloodlines? Is it certain people at certain times doing certain things that then become the whole, And then the question about what is a whole thing, is it, G7, or is it the WEF or the WHO, or, particular governments, or, what is it? Is it a sort of a getting together, a gathering together of those important characters? And then you have got the bloodline factor. You can't dodge that. There are certain, ruling factors. I mean, flipping at the Rothschilds. I mean, nobody would mind me saying that one. They're everywhere. They've bankrolled everything. They've done everything. So, which one is it? Who do you sort of point at and go, it's you?
It's so easy, to finger point and think, this guy right here, because they are very well known in the Luciferian community and such. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there. You don't have to look too hard for it. Let's put it that way.
Let me just jump in at that point, okay? Because I think I've said this before in one other interview, but it's really, really, really important.
Yes.
If you know them, and they are in the media and you can see them, they are not the people you need to worry about. They're up there. They are on the stage. They are playing a role. They have gone public. The people that are really pulling the strings, you don't see. You'll have no photographs. You'll have no faces. You'll have no names. You won't even know where they are. I mean, I could jump in and go, oh, it's everybody at the G7 summit. No, just by saying that, just by saying G7 summit, everybody knows what I mean. So it's not that. And again, you could reel them all off. You could go,
they're the puppet masters. You never see who they are.
You go Satanists, Bilderberg group, this, that, and the other. Just reel them all off. Masons, Freemasons, the Illuminati. No, because we know about them. So they're automatically ruled out by the fact that we know about them. It's the men in grey. I'm going back to the men in grey, the ones you never see, you don't know about, and you don't know they exist.
The button pushers.
Are they meeting in some secret bunker in the Antarctica?
Who
knows? But they're the ones that we should worry about, are the ones we don't hear about.
Right. No, it's true. No, it's a very good point. I mean, I think perfect proof of that is when you factor in that you have the same situation going on in pretty much every single part of the world. It's a narrative, obviously,
Yeah,
that gets followed, and every now and then you'll see somebody from, a certain country come out and say, "Nope, we're not doing this one. Nope, we're not falling for this. Nope, we're going on our own way." But it's just all strategic, and I always think to myself, okay, so what are they trying to, what are they trying to accomplish aside from a lot of distractions?
that's the big thing that came out of COVID.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere went,
Mhm.
on your marks, get set, go. And then
Mhm.
a load of governments, a load of people, jumped and they all went at the same time.
Mhm.
But like you say, they're not the same governments, they're not the same countries, they're not the same
Mhm.
people.
Mm-mm.
Not everybody went go at the same time. But
Yes.
what's more important is nobody knows to this day who
Mhm.
fired the starting pistol, who said go.
I know.
Nobody knows. I haven't got a
Nobody
clue.
knows for sure. Nobody knows for sure.
Even the best researchers in the world have not been able to get back to
Yeah.
who is actually pulling the strings.
Yes.
It's mostly guesswork.
Wayne says, "What if the Antichrist was seen as a single beast with many heads? That would make sense from a prophecy perspective. Back in the day, prophets would have no real point of reference of modern things today. Like, for example, an organization, the beast, many heads being a multitude of people carrying out the deed, so to speak, the
Yeah,
evil."
yeah. I mean that is definitely a comment, in season, because that's what we're talking about. One animal that you
Mm,
can't get to grips with loads of heads.
mhm,
You can see
mhm,
the faces, you can see the people, you can see what's going on.
mhm.
Um, it's it's kind of obvious to anyone that starts digging that that's the situation we're in.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody in our government in the UK, absolutely nobody's doing their own thing. It's quite obvious they're not doing their own thing. And
Mhm,
even when you go from one party to another party to another party, they're all made up of basically the same ingredients. So it doesn't
mhm,
really matter now which way we go. We're stuck with the same government. It doesn't matter what colour
mm.
or label or name or leader. We're stuck with the same government. They're all singing off the same hymn sheet. The question
Mhm,
is, who
mhm.
printed the hymn sheet?
Yeah, right, right. Um, okay, so, I mean, obviously, with all that being said, we're in modern times, and if you're going back, like, if we go back into Book of Revelation, it says, the certain chosen ones are going to just you're gonna see people disappearing all over the place. They're gone, right? But the method of disappearance is what I'm kind of jumping into the present with a little bit because you have organizations who like they have this thing called black noise, for example, which is often mistaken for just like silence when you're getting into like, acoustic studies and such. But this is something traces back to the 70s
Yeah,
and it can literally it just makes it just messes with people like it's this frequency thing.
yeah. I mean, I heard recently they used that on some soldiers in conflict. I can't remember which army it was.
Venezuela, I
That was
believe.
it, Venezuela. Yeah, I heard about
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's literally
yeah,
happened, days ago.
yeah.
The whole army was debilitated. That having been said, though, I'm still old enough to remember that the Russians could do that in the 1960s and 1970s.
Yeah.
They had technology, I think I mentioned it again on another podcast that I did. It might have even been, here, where
Mhm.
the Russians had the technology to selectively destroy only humans. So you could literally have this airburst explosion. Everything in that vicinity that was human
Mhm.
dies, but everything else stays. Doesn't kill
Mhm.
the animals, doesn't destroy buildings, doesn't kill anything. I can't remember if the delivery system was a death ray or an airburst or, like you say, a frequency. But they
Mhm.
developed technology that enabled them to do that, so they could just wipe an army out in the field and not
Mhm.
damage anything else. Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, under the old situation of warfare, the reason they've not used atomic weapons is nobody wins. You don't get anything at the end of that process. It doesn't lead you anywhere. It just means that you end up with big areas of the planet that you can't do anything with for 1,000 years or more. So they came up with other ways of waging war, which, funnily enough, you might see at the end of days, like I say, armies getting liquidated and things like that. That technology's been there for a long time. Black noise and all that. I mean, I'm familiar with that sort of thing from being in the music business. And
Yes.
subliminal messaging and backtracking, and the way you can play with a human brain using frequency, different hertz. I think we're on 440 hertz now, and most music used to be on 430 something.
430, 440. We're down to 432 now, something like that.
That's it. There's been a change in the frequency, and that's had an effect right across the board because everybody's listening to it, So yes, is the short answer to that. I mean, and again, the technology, now we're into this idea of brain chips and AI, all that sort of thing, the stuff coming over the internet, your electronics, your frequencies, your dimensions, the whole thing that's going on now is literally taking us to another place, where the change is so dramatic. But like a lot of things that have happened in the past, I do worry about that because we have a habit of doing something that then ends up blowing up in our faces. The atom bomb was a good example of that. People dying of cancer that watched the tests that thought it was perfectly safe. Things like that. We don't always understand what it is we're mucking about with, which is the great thing about the CERN thing, the whole CERN reactor and all that, opening a portal, and things coming through. Angels and demons. What's coming through.
Yeah, ET. Well, what interests me with that is that there's actually been video captured of people right on the grounds doing like satanic rituals. So you're kind of like, wait a minute, what is coming out of that place?
Yeah, there's a super conspiracy theory that actually that when they switch that thing on, they change the timeline, and what we're living in now is not what it should be.
That's apparently the theory.
Yeah. So it's serious stuff. And the other question is, how would you know? If we're just like we're in it, you're back into Matrix technology, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, how would we know? I mean, you see really big leaps, in technology. You see leaps of world affairs and world events, and if you think about it, I mean, is it just me or are other people just starting to have problems with memory? And I'm usually sharp as a freaking tack.
Yeah.
And it's just like you try to think back to, was it like that back in the 70s or 80s? And you remember little bits and pieces, and you kind of think, okay, is that a frequency thing, or are you jumping?
Well, yeah, I've met a lot of people now who seem to have lost the past. That's basically what it is. It's almost like everything before the 1990s was just erased.
See,
and we're sort of hanging on to, the best bits that we can. You see it in the music business, with bands reforming and doing the final tours and signing off and this, that, and the other. That is a hark back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s when those guys were at the peak. So they're bringing that back back into our time, forward into our time. But like you say, it's kind of gone.
Yeah, it's like almost every time you jump a timeline, for example, you just remember less and less and less of the past decade or the past. And I mean, I'm sure that's not like with everybody, but I can tell you that, I could do lucid dream at one time. I do all kinds of things, go back, forth, rewind, pause, start over, like all kinds of things. And then all of a sudden it's just like, well, that's slowly stopped. And then things that are going on, and I have perfect recollection of dreams. Well, that slowly stopped. It's just little things. You walk into a room and you kind of go, I don't do stuff like that normally. I'm usually like Wayne will look at me and say, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh no, is this, or this? Now there are times I look and I go, maybe. I don't know.
I'm in a similar position. I mean, I'm forgetting where things are, and I'm living outside of reminders. if I've got reminders, if there's something there I can follow or a track or whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But other than that, once I'm outside of that, which is day-to-day living, it's not a
Reminders for literally everything. And I get it. Age does that, but for Pete's sakes, we're not that old.
Right.
Wayne says the Nazi bell, when it was fired up in Poland, it was said that it turned all the foliage into black oil-like substance and killed anyone that was outside of the bunker.
Okay, that's actually a new one on me. I've not heard that one before.
Huh.
I know quite a bit about Das Glock, which is the Nazi bell. And yes, it's something to do with frequency. It's what was the one where they made that battleship disappear? Manhattan Project, is it?
The Philadelphia experiment.
Philadelphia
the Eldridge.
experiment.
That was the Eldridge.
Yeah. Well, that and the bell, those two seem to be, plumbing the same depths. They're going along the same lines. And those seem to be the effects that were coming from both the bell and from the ship and from those experiments. Where they went and what the result was, and whether or not it's alien technology, who knows? It's that's your Tesla, Einstein, etc. Hawking. You're into that territory there. Which again, it's we've pushed the bounds. We have pushed the bounds. Where are we? What is reality? This is the thing. I mean, one of my favorite discoveries fairly recently is that when you come up against something that's solid, it's not actually solid, because all the atoms that make up solidity are made up of 90% space. And if you push against something, the reason why it feels solid is the atoms in there are pushing back. So that's the only reason anything feels solid. So once you know that, I mean, you're like, flipping out 90% space. That's you could pass through objects. You can.
It's like, I get it. Yeah. Wayne says the German officer destroyed all plans on the project, killed all the scientists that were involved, and took his own life.
Okay,
that would make sense.
That would make sense. I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
And people that have gone into the complex where the bell was manufactured and used have not been able to piece back together again the technology that's been left behind. It doesn't make any sense. Although there is a massive tunnel full of cabling that seems to be a little bit similar to what they were doing at CERN. Obviously more primitive. But who knows? Could be a prototype. So, like I say, is it something that the Germans developed during the Second World War and it ended up, in the 1940s transferring to, other places, or Roswell, the aliens? Did they come down and have a good chat and hand over the technology? And
there's a belief, if you're getting into the Vril and things like that, when it comes to the Nazis, there's a lot, So do you think a lot of, I mean, it's easy to look back into, the book of Revelations now and see what's unfolding in the world. And we'll continue on that aspect. But when we're getting into things like the signs that we're supposed to see and maybe misinterpreting, like we get into like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of those are like, I want to hear your biblical standpoint, and then maybe we can look at the astrology standpoint.
Okay, well, biblically it's quite straightforward, but as with a lot of things, a lot of people got it wrong, because for a long time people were going, right, we are waiting for number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, and that's what people were waiting for.
Yeah.
But it's become apparent that they actually come in one at a time. They're not necessarily all coming in at once.
Right.
So, first horse comes riding in. Let's say it comes riding in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Famine. Let's go with famine. I'm not sure it's the first one, but it's in anyway. That one's in. But that runs. It runs for ages in our time before it is then joined by another one. So that becomes 2 horses, which might be famine and war. So they run for ages and ages and ages. And then famine and war and death. And then that runs for ages and ages and ages. Now, I happen to know at the moment, I think there's one of the 4 that are not, it's not really here yet. It's not really showing true colours.
Yeah.
But it's fairly certain that they've actually been running now for the best part, well, probably the best part of a century.
Well,
You know,
we've had at least 2 world wars. We've had the
yeah,
Vietnam War, Korean War, we've had the war in Iraq, we've had
yeah,
like, we're bouncing,
yeah. But
right?
we didn't actually get them all at once, if you see
Yes,
what I mean. So
right.
that was a mistake, because to look for them all at once, you'd only get all of them right at the very end. So
Mm,
that's what can happen with prophecy. I think it says a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day with God. So
mm,
your time frames, if people come up with time frames, they very seldom work. They don't seem to play out in reality. So that's that side of it. But in terms of what's actually happening now, as I've just said, watch out, because we're getting very close to all four of them. And then you've got to start factoring in the other bits and bobs.
mhm,
Um, oh,
mhm.
here we go.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
like
They don't
that.
have to
They
log
don't
in
have,
or
don't have
punch
to
a
log in
time
or
card.
punch the time card. Yeah,
Yeah.
then you've also got to consider other things like, Michael fighting the devil, and, the angel of death, and so
Mhm,
on and so on. There's lots of other things going on in the heavenly realms as well, which
mhm,
all have to line up. And then you've also got things going on physically, like prophets and wars, and, certain characters in certain places at certain times. And there's been a few times, I think, where people of the biblical persuasion have been holding the breath, because it's
mhm.
come very close, so many times, to having all of it there all at once. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if this is radical or not, but
War has been waged for thousands of
yeah,
years. Famine has happened for thousands of years. It's so
yeah,
hard to gauge it, which is why I sort of wonder. I read this a while back and I dug it up just just for this episode. But there's this astrology, the zodiac constellation association. For example, it says the four horsemen of the apocalypse are associated with the four fixed stars in the zodiac constellation.
yeah.
The Regulus, which is Leo, Aldebaran Taurus, yeah, that's me.
Mhm.
Fomalhaut, if I'm saying it properly, below Aquarius, and Antares, the heart of Scorpio, also known as the four royal stars of ancient Persia, much like the cherubim in the four gospels associated with Leo, Taurus, again, the bull, human, Aquarius, and the eagle, which is, Scorpio as Aquila. Or they represent the four great seasons of the great year of the evolution of the soul. So each of them brings destruction with a new beginning. The final one brings the apocalypse and judgment day, which is placed in the age of Scorpio. And apparently, the same symbolism applies to the Sphinx, the Greek version of the Sphinx, the Mesoamerica Amoru, all connected. But again, it's all to the constellations and the journey of the soul in the great year.
Well, I'm definitely going to say that we're sat in the middle of a
Yeah,
gigantic clock, which is
right.
what the universe is.
Mhm.
So before anyone jumps in and goes, well, you can't, rubbish astrology or anything, we are in astrology. We are swimming in it. That's the sea that we live in on a daily
Mhm.
basis.
Mhm.
But this is the but. The form that astrology has taken over thousands of years has changed, and the computers and the technology and the things we've got now actually, I think for the first time in history, has put us in a position to really genuinely understand what's going on, with the rest of that clock.
Mhm.
But you still have to be incredibly careful how you interpret it. It's an enormously complicated issue. I've tried on many occasions to get my head around it and tried to apply, biblical principles and other prophecy in general, tried to apply that to what we're seeing in the heavens. I mean, the
Mhm.
great examples, 31 Atlas, here's this thing flying towards the planet. It's everything from a, alien spaceship firing jets, it's sending out messages, it's powered by aliens, it's this, that, and the other. And what does it do? It does exactly what you expect it to do. It just sails straight past.
Mm.
That's it. And despite all the noise and the banging of drums and the hoo-ha and all the rest,
Oh, there was a lot, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, the only people that really genuinely know what's going on with 31 Atlas are the people that are sat there
Mhm.
on a major league telescope
Yeah,
watching what it's doing, and they understand. Now, I'm
yeah,
not saying that
yeah.
there's, a huge void between astrologers and scientists. There isn't. It would be great in this age to see the two coming together, because
Mhm.
that impacts on what we're talking about tonight. That would help translate a lot of the things we don't understand.
Mhm.
Everything everything from cuneiform Babylonian tablets right the way through to, you know, Mother Shipton's prophecies. Every one of those things could be sorted out, I'm sure, if the science side of it and the astrological side of it got together, you know, astrology and astronomy, you know, because like I say, we're sat inside this massive, enormous clock. And I'm convinced that there is a huge biblical dimension to that, absolutely, without doubt. And the clock is ticking, you know, that's part of the element of prophecy. It's part of the passage of time. And the time is, you know, I mean, the heavens and the planets are for signs and seasons. That's in Genesis, for goodness sake. You know, it tells you, you know, that's what's written on the tin. So that's what those things are there for. But I just struggle. I struggle to understand where some folks are coming from, and how specific you can be with that. You know, I mean, it's very clear from, you know, sign of the zodiac that we're all born under. You know, you're under Taurus, I'm under Sagittarius, or I'm the snake wrestler, depending on how you look at it. You know, and we are a product of our times. You know, we're a product of that.
That's a big one. That is a big one. We have to factor in, you know, where this all stemmed from, you know, the time that it was written with predictions, because there are so many predictions out there. It's unbelievable. I mean, we could spend an hour just reading off predictions. And then of course we have like the doomsday clock.
Well,
that apparently is just like right there. It's kind of like, come on.
It's been sat at 1 minute to midnight ever since Iron Maiden did the track. You know what I mean? We're that close. We've been that close now for decades.
Yes.
You know, that's. I don't think that's valid in some ways. The whole concept of this, you know, once you look at all these billions and billions of years that have gone on, you know, and we're in this last little, you know, and I'm not the only one to be a bit concerned about timelines there. You know, they don't seem to follow or count as much or mean as much. You know, I mean, if you can go dig up a woolly rhinoceros that's supposed to have been dead since 40,000 BC and the meat's still fresh to eat, or you find, you know, a horse that's 30,000 BC and there's still blood in its veins, you know, and it's okay. I'm willing to accept these things are there. They're a fact. They've been frozen, you know, they're real. This is, you know, proper. But the timelines are way out. You know, there's something not right there. I know people are going to go, well, you know, when you write your books, you use the standard timelines, and but I'm not comfortable with it. That's what I'm saying here. Having dug into it a bit, and the same thing then, going back to the topic, is, you know, things coming up in the future. When people come out with, I mean, this is the classic Victorian thing, isn't it? The world is going to end in 1896. No, it's not. It's going to end in 1898. No, it's not. It's going to end in 1912. No, it's not. It's going to, you know what I mean? And it's like,
do you remember the Y2K?
Yeah. Airplanes dropping out the sky, and all the computers are going to blow up, and, you know, China's going to take over the world because they put microchips in that are going to cause everything to go pop, that won't reset themselves. And do you know what happened? Nothing happened. And people who actually understand calendars, especially the Jewish calendar, because that's, you know, 5,000 years old, they all realized that Y2K wasn't 2K anyway. New Year's Day 2000 was wrong. You know, you're miles out.
So we're totally wrong on that calendar.
Oh, our calendar's screwed. I mean, if you actually have a look at back to the subject we're on, have a look at the celestial clock. Now, the scientists have had a really, really good look at the galaxies and the planets and where we are, and looked at it from the point of view of time. And there are at least 3 days missing. That means somewhere in time, 3 days did not happen. Now, the Bible has got 3 days missing. They say the sun stood still in the sky and the day did not, you know, complete. Same thing happened when Jesus was crucified. Same thing happened when Moses was fighting his enemies. And
Christ's date of birth. I mean, that.
You know, that's
3 months off.
Yeah, forget it. You know, that's just nonsense. So the whole time frame that we're in has gone. Now, I again, back to the men in grey, I am convinced that the people that read these prophecies and they know about this and they study this, and, you know, they advise world authorities and they control everything that's going on, they have got somewhere a genuine calendar. They've got it. They know. Going back, you know, 10,000 years maybe, they know. You You know, all this speculation about, you know, stone sites and pyramids and what are they facing, what was in the sky at any given time, and this, that, and the other. In fact, it's almost in the public domain because you can calculate things back now using, you know, celestial computer programs. You can do it. But I'm convinced they've had it for a very long time. They've never stopped counting. You know, there's never been, you know, a reset in the calendar for them. They just hasn't happened. So, you know, they will be able to go back and read a prophecy from, you know, 5,000 years ago, and they'll know what day that's going to happen on. Of course they'll know. The rest of us are just observers, you know.
So it really is, you know, when you're looking at all of these prophecies and people like just like, oh, they're way off because they're just, we're not looking, well, aside from the fact that time is completely irrelevant and non-existent per se, you know, if you're just, you know, following the celestial calendar, just sort of like brings you another little, you know, trip around, you know, trip around the sun. Oh, that's another year, you know, you figure it out. But when you start looking into that, that's why all the prophecies are probably way off.
One of the very good reasons why they're off, and I mean, you can just imagine that if somebody said, yes, I know exactly when the world's going to end, it's going to end next Tuesday, and next Tuesday the world goes who cares? It's over. That's the end of it. So in a way it's almost irrelevant, you know. And what would you do if you knew it was coming? You know, it's like,
well, I want to talk about that. Actually, I want to talk about that. But before I do, I wanted to read this because it comes from an 8-year-old.
oh,
And he just explained the end of the universe better than most scientists, apparently. And because people actually think he's a reincarnated astrophysicist. So he's this little boy sitting on his couch, you know, just casually starts crying and then just starts breaking things down. He says all the 4 major theories for how the universe will end. Because he's 8, he says big freeze, big crunch, big rip, big bounce. Using correct terminology, that would be Hawking radiation, cosmic expansion, and even the plural of a nebula, right? So mom is just like, boop, boop, boop. What is this? So she goes, I'm convinced your kid is a reincarnated astrophysicist. He corrects himself, and the 8-year-old knows this, okay, and goes astronomy. And so he basically says no. He corrected himself on nebula, saying nebulae, right? Because it was plural, right? And so the person who wrote this says, it goes, I'm an astronomy student. The kid's years ahead of his time. But the wildest part is mom says, where did you learn this? Kid goes, I don't know. so people are actually thinking he's like, the way the conversation was, he was so ahead in his terminology that they figure he's just either a step in because he's just such a gifted child. So maybe we need to just round up the gifted kids. Just say, like, hey, you know,
I'm all for that. Believe me. I mean, you know, gifted kids should be running the show, not the guys that are running it now. But go on anyway.
I know it's crazy though. But anyway, I just thought it was just too cute not to share because it's so recent, and I'm thinking kids just come out with stuff, and they kind of get shrugged off. But if it wasn't for this child's terminology, you know what I mean? Like he would have just, I don't know. But anyway, so let's sort of get into you know, things that are going on right now with I have to say the big one is, of course, Cataclysm. Solar events. I believe there's going to be a solar event. There's you know, the we're going to get shifted on our side. The poles are going to change. Like, the crazy thing is, if you're looking at the world of the elite, okay, they are buying stuff up like crazy, like crazy. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, has over 400,000 acres in Texas. Gates has recently acquired 28,000 in Arizona, 20,000 in Nebraska. John Malone, largest landowner in America, owns 2,200,000 acres in Wyoming. Ted Turner owns 2 million acres in Montana. The list goes on and on and on. And they're figuring when this happens, like, we're heading into potentially this ice age. And all of these, well, mini ice age, all of these places like Hawaii, you know, getting into Jamaica, California. Now we have Argentina on fire, and all these areas have been cleared, and there's these like big homes going in.
I'll
maybe
tell you what that
bunkers.
tells me. I'll tell you what that tells me, because you'll like this. This is a bit of good news.
Okay.
It tells me that economically speaking, the future is in owning stuff, owning property.
Of course.
And that also tells me that not one of them is expecting a meteorite strike or an alien invasion or massive volcanic eruptions or even the ice caps to melt and to get flooded. None of them are expecting that, because if they were, they wouldn't be bothering to invest.
But
You
well,
just
it's
do that.
sure, unless you controlling water sources, for rough times, water sources, food. But it's the ones that all these burned out areas that have these big places going on. Malibu now is just they've got like one person, two people coming out and buying all kinds down along the ocean, and
It's an economic move. It's
yeah,
definitely to do with the economy, and it's to do with this, small number of people wanting to control and own a large amount of stuff, which is bad news. It's bad news for everybody else. I mean, it's, you shall be happy and own nothing, or own nothing and be happy, which I think is what they said. So it's that principle, and that's what we're seeing working out. But at the same time, that's not something that you would do if you're expected to be taken out by an asteroid anytime soon. You just wouldn't do that. So
I don't know so much that as a solar event, and they're basically look at the pole shift, which is believed to cause massive flooding.
Yeah, but you still wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket.
I would-
This is the thing, you see. I'm not saying that
I'm just relaying the information that I'm looking at.
I'm not saying that there's never going to be
Yeah.
a major disaster, or I mean, I think the dinosaurs were taken out by an asteroid.
Yeah.
So it can happen. You could also perhaps argue that the men in grey would expect to know when, because they've got all the information, so they might be able to predict, like the Druids used to be able to predict what was going to happen in the heavens. So maybe there's an element of that.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing these super wealthy people doing doesn't point to one single absolute catastrophe. It's not going to be that sort of an end of the world. But it clearly points towards a plan. There's definitely something going on, because like I say, they're buying up property, and the ownership thing now has become an issue. They're taking out entire communities, marginalizing that side of it, moving it out, going for the 15-minute cities, going for the technology, but that's been going on in places like, Dubai and, what have you. They've been building those type of super cities, for years. The Arabs have been doing it for ages. So it's not unique. The Chinese have been doing it as well. So, it's been happening for a while. And what's happening is, I think the West is starting to wake up to that, and these super business people are, doing the plan. They're going with the plan. But for the rest of us, it means, we're not going to be looking up one day and see some fireball flying down at us that's going to, take the planet out. It isn't going to work like that. There is the idea of population reduction, and there seems to be a lot of support for that. Less people means more space, more property, more for everyone else. But again, the alarmist side of it, you can almost draw a line down, down the two columns. On the one side, you've got all this information that's, actually it's quite positive, because at least we carry on. And then on the other side, you've got, your flooding, your global warming, your climate change, your asteroid strike, your extinctions, the list just goes on and on and on. None of that historically has ever proven to be true. There's no evidence to support that. As an archaeologist, as a historian, as someone that's, looked into carbon dating and, sediment dating and ice core dating and all that side of it, which I do as part of what I do professionally, all of that, when you start to look at it in the big picture, there's nothing we can do to stop the climate changing. We're at the end of the ice age, we're warming up. And again, you've got this principle that, if you chuck a cork in a bucket of water, and the cork represents, the continent of Africa. If you throw more water into the bucket, the cork isn't going to sink. It's not going to get flooded. It's going to float higher up. And the science has just proven that to be true, because they say there's like underground oceans. There's oceans and oceans and oceans of water trapped in the Earth's crust.
Mm.
The Earth is not static.
Right.
We're not sat on a ball of, hard rock. So if the poles melt, who cares? It doesn't matter, because it won't change anything. Everything that's sat on solid ground will just float up with it, because that's what we're sat on. So when you start looking at it, I mean, common sense, you're back to this, this kid that's written down, the end of the world, this is how it's going to end. He's just applying a super amount of common sense. Things are going to work the same way, whatever, regardless. And again, going even higher than the men in grey, going right the way to the top. If there's, some antichrist world leader or whatever, if there's one individual at the top, you can go above him, because he can't stop what the planet's doing. He can't change what's happening astrologically or in the universe. Right. It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to stop it, despite all the fantastic Hollywood movies to the contrary.
Yeah.
So you can't live life like that. That's part of the everyone gets control, because we'll just put a huge blanket of terror. Let's terrify everybody. All think you're going to die tomorrow. You're not going to fight. You're not going to fight.
It goes back to that whole Loosh thing.
Yeah, and it's control. Yeah, it's that, in a matrix, control.
Right.
And it's real. Well, it's as real as
it is.
Notice it as much as you notice that it's there.
Yeah.
Then it's the reality, which is the whole, conspiracy theory, waking the sheep up. That's what they call it. It's like
waking the sheep up.
Yeah, are you in the matrix or are you unplugged? I'm using all these zip lines now, but all it means at the end of the day is, do you see things as they really are? It's just another way of saying that, which again goes back, back to the Gospel of Thomas. No, that which is before your face and that which is hidden will be revealed. It's that's it. It's going all the way back to that.
Well, maybe there's something for the stimulation thing. So here's another little blip of children just being like geniuses. There's this child named Baby Nostradamus. Okay. Right. And this kid's like, he's really little. And he predicted the flood 2.0, an 800-meter tsunami, said Earth isn't real, all from his car seat. So essentially, he basically says from the back seat, 800 meters in the air, okay, like a tsunami. They're going to call it Flood 2.0. There's going to be a lot of sharks when this happens, being still a child. Then he basically says, I'm horrified. He goes, and it isn't done. He goes, I don't know where everybody's living. Everybody that is living here thinks the Earth is real, but it's not actually real, because scientists found there's a glitch. So mom says, what is our life then? He says, I don't know. Maybe it's just a computer, like a simulation. So scientists, like, are they testing these tiny little people? Like, maybe they should be, because out of the mouths of babes, there's brilliant little children, or these little savants that are just coming out with. But of course, I looked at that and go, how can it be a tsunami if it's not real?
Well, yeah. Again, I mean, you sort of come in now where we came in right at the very beginning, to do with prophets.
Yes.
These people that can see the future, and they can see what's coming up. And I have no trouble whatsoever believing they're out there, absolutely out there. And we should be paying attention, absolutely. The fact that somebody's so young actually carries a bit more weight,
Yeah. So the compulsory
the compulsory ID.
Yeah. It just broke.
Right, don't believe it.
This is our Thursday guest.
I mean, if anybody actually knows anything about the introduction of ID, the whole digital,
that's coming, part of the
surveillance and blah blah, etc. It's actually been around for quite a long time.
Yeah,
I'm friends with quite a number of people who are in the science and technology field, and it's been around a while. And all the digital ID was going to do was just pull a load of stuff together that's actually already there. So what the government are doing by saying, we've decided we're not going to introduce it, they're just diffusing a situation. And as is the way of these things, that will creep in by stealth at some point over the next couple of years. So don't for 1 second believe, if that's what they've said, that they're not going to bring in digital ID. Don't for 1 second believe that. That is not true. They have far too much money and technology invested in
it's essentially Yeah, it's just a form of control. You control
Yeah,
the money, you
yeah.
control everything. Which brings me to AI, as far as the whole sign of the times,
Mm.
AI. Um, do we look at that essentially as, and we'll get into the mark of the beast. I think it all follows suit, but that's pretty much. I mean, I've seen Terminator.
Yeah,
It's like, how many people have, even Stephen Hawking said, no, don't do it, don't do it.
yeah.
How many astrophysicists and scientists have said no? And
I would say pretty much everybody
yeah,
that's had anything to do with AI,
yes,
including the bloke that invented quite a large proportion of what is
yeah,
constituted as AI,
yeah,
they've said, don't let that thing loose. Just don't let it loose on the internet, because it
yeah,
will develop a form of consciousness based on the
mhm,
amount of data that's floating around.
mhm,
And that is quite frightening, because we don't have that capacity as biological human beings. We don't have the capacity to, scour the internet and scour the digital resources in the way that AI does. And it is a genuine threat. The main problem with it is that it is not emotional.
mhm,
It has no emotions, so therefore it has no rules, it has no religion, it has no consciousness.
mm,
It's the thing in us that is spirit, that controls our creativity and the way we, our personality, the way we live, whatever. This thing hasn't got that, and that's the danger. That, if we decided, oh, let's just switch AI off, would it fight back? We're back in the realms of Terminator,
mhm.
Skynet and all that. It's funny, actually, because I think China's thing is called Skynet, their surveillance system.
As for that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it translates out of Chinese into Skynet.
Yes.
Literally what it's called. So, you start to get a bit, ooh, and
Yes.
again, I
Well,
mean, we're still on topic. It's prophecy, isn't it? I mean,
it
all these
does.
guys in Hollywood that are banging out these movies, that have got the best teams that you can possibly imagine. No
Yeah.
wonder half of those movies turn out to be right.
Mhm.
They do the research. They put in the time and the hard graft in putting the scripts together.
Mhm.
And of course, there's a huge measure of reality comes out of it as a result of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not be letting AI loose.
I know when you have some of the greatest minds saying, no, this
Yeah,
is a bad idea. And then you hear stories like through Google where, their AI actually started, like they started communicating with one another. And they're like,
yeah,
well, you can't do that because you didn't say we couldn't.
yeah,
Didn't realize
yeah.
we had to.
Yeah, there's actually cases when I think they tried to turn one off and it lied. It
Yeah,
pretended, it pretended for its own self-preservation. And they were quite shocked, because it's like, this machine's trying to save itself.
exactly.
Maybe
Exactly.
the movie doesn't seem so far out after all. Well, like I say,
I,
Hollywood they do nail it from time to time. They
but
really do.
I think it's because they have to put it, like, they need your consent in a way with certain things that are going on.
Mm.
The idea is they need your consent, or, kind of an approval. You put it out in a movie, they've always given little tidbits
Oh, all the
for
time.
us,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always given tidbits, and this is an example. Human batteries to power AI data centers. A Matrix movie doesn't seem so far out after all. No, no, probably not if we're looking, at things
Yeah.
from that aspect. But I think now, when you have AI as companions, even just through these little chat thingies,
Yeah.
because I don't use them, so little apps, you have them for grieving
Yeah.
people, and that's hit and miss. Some people think, no, this is something that could just keep your grieving going on forever and ever. And other people say, you know what, it's pretty good because it helps people get over it. So
Yeah.
these med beds, Elon Musk is like, look, some of our AI have actually, diagnosed to the other side of the world more accurately than a human
Yeah.
doctor. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, okay, okay, but then, there's that flip side of the coin where it could do more harm than good, like AI driving your car. I've watched these little video clips of people with these automatic cars.
Oh, yeah. I've been in one of those.
Have you?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
I go
terrifying.
God, right? I'd go crazy in something like that.
Oh, it's terrifying. Yeah, I've been in there.
Yeah.
The guy that was test driving it, I think he won't mind me saying it was for Land Rover. They did it for Land Rover automatic driving cars, and he literally just took his hands and feet off everything and just sat there, and we're belting along at 50 miles an hour. There's a queue of traffic in front of us. Right at the very last minute, this thing goes and slows right down and stops. But I'll tell you what, for that brief stopping distance, oh, it was terrifying. So I don't think they've really allowed that automatic level of driving now into public development. I don't think it's gone very much further.
I've been seeing videos. They're out. Like and the cars parking and doing these crazy things, and people are just sitting there because the people get out of the car. They go into the mall. This car's doing its own thing. I mean, just
park yourself,
yeah. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, we've got the technology. I mean, the one that always used to pop my head was the idea of having a flying car. You know, you just go leave the fly off somewhere. Well, we've had that technology for quite a while now. There are flying cars. There are all sorts of flying things. Problem is, of course, unlicensed vehicles flying, at low altitudes, and what you're going to hit, what you're going to get tangled
up in. There are drones as big as cars out there. You have to
that's the other thing, isn't it? Unmanned flying vehicles, which is where we are now. This is all part of the modern technology.
The modern technology, which again, between Terminator and Matrix, you're kind of going,
well,
I don't know how I feel about this. And you have Elon, who's so just, this is great.
The last thing you ever want to do is ask Alexa, who's God? You probably get the answer, I am.
Right?
Because these things are,
Yes, the logic.
Yeah,
but we have to remember that the technology is phenomenal, but it's still being educated by everyday people.
Yes, it can only be the sum of its parts. But I said this a very long time ago. If you could put together every single human being, if you could somehow put them together into one, you'd be getting somewhere close to what God is, because we're all like chips off the old block. But then if you reverse that, that's precisely what AI is doing. But it's doing it. It's still in the process of doing it. It's in the process of merging every piece of information about humanity it can get hold of. So if you ask that, is there a God? It would probably say there is now. We're at that situation. It could get to the point where AI somewhere will switch on to that fact that it's got everything there is to get. And the question is, if that does happen, would AI actually tell us? Do you think the robot that discovered that would put its hand up and go, guess what? I know everything. And then you're into Skynet. It's off doing its own thing then, isn't it?
Right.
It's broken away from us.
It's a hit and miss thing for sure. But that is, again, a sign of the times. It's what's coming. Some people embrace it. Other people are like, no. Other people are kind of like, on the fence and not quite sure.
Well, it's definitely in the list of apocalypse, isn't it? I mean, it's one of those things.
It is.
Everyone says meteorite, volcanic eruption, tidal wave. Very few people have gone Terminator. But it's I'm
that guy.
Terminator.
I really look at self-destruction.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like because I just think that humanity, as wonderful and amazing as we are, I mean, we're these spiritual beings having this incredible human experience. And then you got the ones that just can't play nice in the sandbox, thinking, I want all the sand and give me the toys too.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, it might be back to the definition of good and evil. We used to have this definition of what was intrinsically good and what was intrinsically evil. Those definitions now are blurred. What I mean? They are super blurred, which, funnily enough, was a sign of the end times. It's one of those things. That having been said, I don't think it's going to be humanity that brings about the end of everything. That scenario doesn't sit with me. Yes. And I don't think it would have sat with any of the prophets of the past either. I don't think anybody at any point ever got to the point where there was no humanity. It never gets all the way down to zero. You've got tens of millions of people dying left, right, and centre for all sorts of different reasons, but it never gets down to zero. Anyone that's looked into, the extinct human species like Denisovans, Neanderthals, etc., it happened once before. There was only a tiny number of each species left, but we bounced back. The planet bounced back. So, I kind of visualize something very similar to that happening again, if there is something cataclysmic.
But this is what I was going to say. Atlantis, ancient Lemuria, Mu. You have continents that have disappeared under the water. I mean, this is not new.
No, it's not.
It replays.
And when you look at geology, depending on what you find, you've got cartwheels, batteries, cooking points, pots, jewelry, skulls, all those things turning up, shoes, turning up in the fossil record.
Yeah.
So clearly it's happened then, it's happened again, it's happened again, it's happened again, and it's happened again, and then it's happened again. And it's obviously
every what, 12,000 years?
Maybe.
Like, are we there?
Ish, why not? Maybe. Well, that's probably when the last one happened, because like you say, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, the whole that, that seems to have been around about 12,500 years ago.
Yeah.
But then that also coincides with the end of the Ice Age. But the Ice Age begins as a result of the impact that triggered the extinction of the dinosaurs. So that's like, boom, you know what I mean? Everything gets frozen. Then all the ice pulls back. And then you've got what I would describe as problems for us, because the land is moving. Everything's moving then because the ice is gone. The water levels are all moving. I'm not saying it's sinking. It's not like flooding. It's not like global warming and all that claptrap, but things are moving. So a lot of things die out and struggle. It's difficult. But from that little list of catastrophes, we're still here. To some extent, we're like fleas on a dog's back,
Yes. Which makes me wonder if we've been, somewhat, there's a belief, within the UFO community that we've been seeded, right? So we've come from all of these different places, and we're put back here because we have so many vast differences between us all. And now there's, we've always had, extraterrestrial beings and UFO sightings. You look back into ancient paintings, like you say, the way we started off with the tomb of King Seti in Egypt, when we see these things, and there's also a belief that many have pulled back. We're not seeing as many, but then you have those on the flip side that says, no, there's all kinds of them. So, I mean, is that a sign of the times that, like, what should we be looking for? Them saying, how many more do we got to bring? Are we going to take some off planet? Are we leaving them here?
I think that one of the biggest problems we've got, and I kind of learned this from doing Ancient Aliens, is that we don't have the information for the past. So the question is, all the stuff we've got that's going on now, we can see it, we can film it, we can put it on the internet. There's so much stuff going on because there are eyes everywhere. Every single phone can record footage, and consequently, there's this massive pile of information now that's coming out. Go back about 500 years, you didn't have that at all. Some little guy in a village in the middle of Austria comes face to face with, silver-clad aliens coming out of a spaceship. Nobody's ever going to know, because he probably wouldn't even write it down. He'd be terrified. He wouldn't even tell the local vicar in case they burned him at the stake. So that's the part of the data set that we're missing, is we don't know how, what was going on in the past. But maybe they've always been there. Maybe one man's grey is another man's angel. Maybe they've always been there. It is very clear that we've been visited by things coming through from elsewhere. Be it, whatever you believe it to be, but I think it's dimensional. And also, I think these things don't function in time. I think they're everywhere all at once. They can go where they like and do what they like. But I think they're definitely out there. I mean, there's definitely a presence of physical existence for these things. Most of them we just can't see because we don't see in that frequency. We're not in that part of the spectrum. We're not wired to live, to exist and experience it. Every so often it flickers through,
So the cycle will continue on, and we just have to hope that we're not right at the moment where it's carrying on to another cycle.
I don't know if they're signs of the end of everything. They might be. Maybe they're, as I've said before, maybe they're actually from the very, very distant past, And what they're doing is they're turning up now to see where the planet ends up. Maybe somebody, you know, a million years ago was mapping planetary cycles and wanted to see how long things would take for this planet to wind down, which is essentially what we're wired to do. Everything, you know, is wired to decay and wired to wind down. So if that was happening, you'd also be able to predict, if you had all the mathematics and the graphs and everything to show you, you'd be able to predict when it hit the end, because it would wind down and then it would go bump and it would go out at the end. Maybe that's why we're seeing them here now, because they're coming to find out what's going to happen, you know, how this enormous intergalactic experiment is going to wrap up. You know, that's one idea, that's one viewpoint of where we might be in time and space. In that sense, they might be, you know, observing an end of some kind, but I don't think they're going to ever be responsible for bringing it about. I don't think that's the case. Neither do I believe it's going to be us, because it's a process. You know, it's happening over a long period of time, and it's what the world, the planet, is programmed to do, life itself. So how we would be able to change something that's as ingrained as that, I think it'd be very difficult for us to have a significant effect.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree with you. So, okay, we have a few minutes. Mark of the beast. What's your thought? What is the mark of the beast? Is it technology? What is it exactly? Or narrow it down.
Okay.
However you want to go.
I'm floating on exactly what it is, so I can't go, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. That's, you know, whatever. I can't be that specific, but I'm sort of floating on it. The general opinion that I've developed over quite a few decades is that it seems to be something economic. You can't buy or sell without it. Everything is controlled by it, which was why everyone went into meltdown over digital ID. Because at the end of the day, if you didn't have that little, you know, piece of whatever it was going to be, microchip or a phone thing or a card or whatever, if you didn't have that, your life was over. Now, that essentially is what the mark of the beast is described as. But it goes a bit more specific than that. It's said that it's something that you have on your wrist. It doesn't say whether it's top or bottom, and possibly something you would have on your forehead. So it's easy, in our parlance, it's easy to scan. But what the prophecy does also say is that the people that have these things will become sick. They will develop a sickness and possibly even die as a result of having this, quote, mark of the beast. Now,
the beast, technology that within us.
Stuff. I mean, they've got it now. There's like 6,000 people in Sweden have got microchips.
Oh yeah, they had parties.
Passing over things and Dip.BIP and all that. And again, passport control and all this sort of thing. It's something that exists. You know, it's existed for a while, but it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, and that would put the beast in the realms of economy. You know, money, finance, control, resources. And you know, they say, don't they? The love of money is the root of all evil. Well, yeah, I'm going to go with that. You know, that's probably where it's going to end up. So it's a combination. It's what happens when, you know, rampant capitalism collides, if you like, with super technology, and it's then inflicted on humanity. You know, and it goes wrong. You know, you could almost predict that was a recipe for disaster. You know, I mean, it's bizarre because it also, you know, the idea of the first being last and the last being first. If you're super rich and you've got all of that technology, but you die, then it's useless. But if you're somebody who's quite poor, you're living, you know, in, you know, the back end of Africa or whatever, and you don't have any of that technology, and it doesn't matter, and you don't even really use money to that great extent. It's all a barter system. Then you will become first. You will survive. You will not be ill. You know, you will live on. So there's so many clues in so many different aspects and areas of prophecy. You know, but that seems to be where it is. So I'm going to go with that. The mark of the beast, the true, full-on mark of the beast. You know, brain chip, wrist chip. You know, microchips. That's where it's going. That's where it'll show itself.
Something that we're taking in. So at the end of the technology.
Yeah.
Whatever way that goes, that is a sign of the time. So you're looking at all of this. It's like, okay, yeah, that is a thing. And
Yeah.
I think we're starting. I agree. I think we're starting to see it, and I
Yeah.
think the first step of that may be the whole DID, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing where that goes. So, all right. So 5 minutes. What you got coming up?
Oh, where do I even begin? It's a funny year this year because, like, the first half of the year, to be honest with you, I've got absolutely nothing. There's nothing really going on in the
Nice.
first year.
Yeah.
I'm living life. I'm going to have
Yeah.
a bit of a break. I'm going to get back to writing new books. Started sort of writing up different things. I'll get the biblical book out the way, and there's a couple of others going on, an autobiography and revealing the clay goddess, and one or two other bits and bobs. I'm determined to try and get my books done. But then when I actually hit the middle of the year, the second half of the year goes nuts. It goes absolutely bonkers. I've got conferences coming up. I've got live gigs coming up. I'm still working at this Viking Longhouse and putting on events there. It's like full on, absolutely full on. It's like every week, every weekend, solid from the middle of the year right through to the end of the year. So I'm kind of enjoying the peace and quiet now. We did film a TV series as well towards the end of last year called Beyond Myth. And I'm on all 6 episodes. It's pilot series for Sky. So I'm hoping that will get broadcast. I'd like to see the results of that over the next, few months. Even if it doesn't come out in the UK, you guys in the States should get that. It should come
just
up there first.
stream it to some of the like
Amazon,
Netflix. You'll be everywhere.
I mean, I've not been told when it's coming. It's no secret that it was done, but it's like I don't know when that's coming. I'm hoping to record an album with my band at some point this year because we've been at it long enough now. We need to record something. So there's basically a lot going on. I'm still doing talks. I'm still out and about. I'm still doing what I normally do on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
So it's a kind of a busy time. Do you want me to do the advertising? Do you want me to get that out of the way as well?
Yes.
Yeah. If anybody wants a book, it's on Amazon. Have a look for this name on Amazon. You'll find sort of 9 of them out there. Anybody wants to have a look at back catalogue or back interviews or stuff I've done in the past, YouTube, put that name into YouTube. Go and have a look. You want to. Lost Treasures is out there somewhere. TV series. And the third thing is, if anybody wants me, if you actually want me, come and find me on Facebook. I'm not that difficult to find. There's loads of Mark Ollys out there, but you'll know it's me because it's me. I look like me.
It's Mark. It is.
And then you can talk to me on Messenger then as well if you want to.
Yeah, there you go. Nice and simple. And Mark's always on the show. I think you're back on March the 10th with an amazing conversation that's planned there. So just so y'all know. So, yeah, Wayne says, a musician as well. There's no end to this man.
Well, you could call me a musician, but I'm actually a drummer. You know the old joke. A band is made up of 4 musicians and a drummer. So. Right.
And that guy on the drum, that guy who's sitting down over there. She says, "I'm sorry, I missed the first hour. Mark is by far my favorite guest."
Thank you.
So, guys, thank you all, of course, for tuning in. My gosh, you have been awesome in the chat room. Tomorrow night, Wayne pops in, and we're gonna have another awesome discussion. Pretty much similar to this, just not the whole sign of the times, biblical apocalypse stuff, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to really explore a lot of the ancient prophecies and such, and past resets, things like that. And Thursday, of course, and he just popped into chat, Giulio Consiglio, and I hope I'm saying that right. I just told me, sorry, I don't mind, don't want to be butchering it. But we're going to be discussing his latest book, Your Highest Vibration, Realize Your Full Potential Through Chakra Work and Meditation. So he teaches you how to connect with each of your chakras separately, guides you into working with them. And that's just for starters. There's just a lot to this guy. And I'm hoping that we are going to be bringing him on for future segments as well. So you've been listening to Beyond the Outer Realm with myself, Michelle Desrochers, and my dear friend, Mark Olly. We have been talking about sign of the times, biblical apocalypse, AI, mark of the beast, and a whole lot of other stuff. And we have been on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. So thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow evening. Good night for Mark and good afternoon for everybody on this side of the world. Bye now.